here's a look at my panther chameleon. This is obviously a true chameleon, but I've ordered something called a Chameleon Gecko, and that will be arriving from Josh's Frogs through the mail in about a week. A Chameleon Gecko is not a true chameleon, it is a true gecko. It's a species that comes from New Caledonia, and it's a somewhat rare, somewhat unknown species. It's not very popular in the pet trade, but they're extremely easy to keep, and I think if more people knew about them, they'd be way more popular. They thrive at room temperature, so in most cases they don't require any extra heating. They don't require UV lights to thrive like most animals do, such as this false chameleon that I have, which is actually an anole. There he is. And while they do benefit from having some insects in their diet, they can also be fed the crested gecko diet, which is a powdered fruit and insect mix. All you have to do is put the powder in a bowl, add water, mix it together until it's the consistency of baby food, and then you're good to go. Their care is extremely simple, and they're very unique looking geckos. They stay small, so they only need a little tank. And if you keep watching, you'll get to see what they look like, so stay tuned for that. But first things first, I have this old Bioactive tank that has been empty for quite a while. It still has some Isopods and some springtails in it, but I have not had a pet in here for many, many months. So that's why it doesn't look that nice in here. So we're gonna fix it up, put some new plants in here, and get it ready for when the gecko arrives. I have my panther chameleon, my Cuban false chameleon, my crested gecko, and my tree frog in bioactive terrariums, and I highly recommend them because they're self-cleaning to a certain degree. You still need to do a little bit of spot cleaning here and there, but for the most part, it's like its own little ecosystem. It's really cool. You put isopods in here, like I mentioned, which are basically roly-polies. They come in lots of different colors. They're really cool. And they eat any food that your lizard missed, so they help clean up. Sometimes they even eat the feces. They obviously live in the soil, so they keep it aerated, which is good for the plants. The springtails, which are really teeny tiny little bugs, really hard to see, they also help clean things up. So here's a look at the isopods. And then here you can see as an example of a bioactive tank from my anole. And with bioactive tanks, you want to have it in different layers. So the very bottom layer, I put clay stones in, and that's going to help with drainage. Then you put in a mesh screen, and then you can put in your soil or your coconut fiber there. You can also mix in some moss and some dry leaves for the isopods to live under and to eat. And it'll be like its own little environment in here. And since it so closely mimics a natural habitat, I think that the lizards enjoy it more than just a regular plain old tank. And plus it looks cooler too, especially with all the plants. There's a website called the Biodude where you can get a kit to make your own bioactive tank depending on the species. You can also get some supplies from Josh's Frogs and just make it yourself without a kit like I've been doing. Okay, so here's some different plants that I got from Josh's Frogs to add to the bioactive terrarium that I'm redoing. I got some sheep moss on there, and they do recommend that you rinse this off under some water first just to make sure that there's nothing in there. Nothing living in there, just to be on the safe side. And then here's some other live plants that I got. Live plants are really, really beneficial for a bioactive terrarium for a lot of reasons. One, it looks really nice and it provides your animals with places to hide. But also some things that artificial plants can't do is that live plants will obviously help with the oxygen. It'll help purify the air. And then the roots will help with the soil that you have in your bioactive tank, and it'll help keep things fresh. And then the little isopods and the springtails that you have in there will also help. It's like a whole little ecosystem working together, and they'll help by moving around in the soil, preventing mold from developing, and aerating the soil as well, which is good for the plants. And then the plants, in turn, as they have leaves that decay, will feed the isopods, and it's just like its whole own little cycle. Since obviously live plants can grow, unlike the fake ones, as they grow in age, they'll provide more shelter and more hiding places for your isopods and for your pet. Alright, so I'm going to rinse this off, and then I'll show you how I upgrade the tank, and then we'll get to the unboxing once the lizard arrives. And this is more moss than I'm going to need for this little 10-gallon tank, so I'll probably use some of it in my other bioactive enclosures as well. This helps retain humidity, and it just looks nice. So anyway, let's clean up this tank. Make it look pretty. Give it a makeover. Here's some different live plants I got from Josh's Frogs. Grapevine. Some different decorations. So let's see. How do I want this to look? Oh, and I also got this hut that I thought was really cute. Let's move some of this old stuff out. I moved this piece of cork bark and you can see the isopods under it. And isopods reproduce really, really quickly, which is good because occasionally your lizard probably will snack on them, which is actually really healthy for your lizard because these are very rich in calcium. But as I was saying, it's good that these little bugs reproduce so quickly because then you don't have to worry about your population of isopods being gone. So this is an arboreal species, so I'm going to prop that up more. Okay, my camera cut out on me there for a second, but I got this one in, and then I put this one in, and then these are obviously going to grow and vine out and fill this out really nicely, so I don't want to overcrowd it and put too many in. I'll probably add these two to the frog's tank later. Put the coconut there, move the cork bark up. And then I'll put this cute little hut inside of here. And then I got these little fairy lights, and I'm going to hang them up around the enclosure, and I'll show you that when it's done. And I also got an LED light just for the live plants in here. Let's clean off the smudges. So this enclosure is basically ready. I do have like one more viney thing I ordered that hasn't come yet that I'll put in, but I'll show you that. So I'm gonna go put some moss in the frog enclosure, and then when shipping day comes, I'll show you the lizard. Let's see if Gonzo would like some moss in his bioactive terrarium. He's my crested gecko. I've had him for like 14 or 15 years now. The care of the chameleon gecko is extremely similar to them. They come from the same location. Now, obviously, the ones I get are captive bred, but you get the drift. And then I still have a bunch left over, so I'll see if my friend that has a ton of lizards wants this. That way it doesn't go to waste. I've received an email from Josh's Frogs that they have shipped the lizard tonight, so it should be arriving by morning. Now we just wait. Monkey, give me a hug. Good morning, monkey. It's morning now. I got up early and checked the tracking, and it is now very close to me. It's in the final shipping facility, so once it leaves there, it'll be considered in transit, and the gecko will be on its way here. The shipping facility where the gecko currently is only about 40 minutes, give or take, from my house, so it won't be long now. Oh, and look, the chickens carved their pumpkin I gave them the other day. So now I'll just hang out close by to the house. I'm going to be outside this morning making some bouquets. And that way I'll be right here when the delivery guy shows up so I can get the gecko out of the box. And you couldn't have asked for better weather today for shipping. It's nice and cool. It's in the 70s, no wind, no storm, so everything should go very smoothly. Oh, and I apologize in advance. I have a little bit of a cold right now, so my voice might get a little bit crackly here and there. Monkey's gonna wait with me. Want a treat? My favorite thing is when she wants something, she's really polite and she'll put her paw up to say please. The gecko is here. My mom's gonna be here to assist me and hold the camera, and we're gonna open it up and take a look. I'll give that sticker to Nathan, since he likes to put stickers on his cup. I guess this was like a cooling pack that they put with it so it wouldn't get too hot. And then if they ship it during the fall or winter, which depending on where you live, they don't always ship during the winter for obvious reasons, but sometimes they'll include a heat pack. They put the birthday on here, which was really cool. It was born the day before the 4th of July. Okay, so I brought it upstairs to take it out of the little deli cup that it's in, so that way I can open it up over the enclosure. That way if it gets spooked and jumps, it'll land somewhere safe in here and not get lost. So I'm gonna unplug the grow lights I have on for the plants, that way I don't stress it out. Take those down for now. Now, like I said before, these geckos prefer room temperature, so everything's ready to go, but if you were getting a reptile that needed a warmer enclosure and you just got it and it was shipped, you don't want to put it in anything that has a heat source until it's recovered from shipping. So you would put it in the tank without any lights or heating pads turned on, let it get accustomed for a few hours, and then introduce the lighting. That way you don't shock it from the temperature extremes from being shipped and then going directly into a tank that has heat. But like I said, this species needs room temperature, so it's already ready to go. I am going to spray it down a little bit before I put it in so it can get hydrated. They drink the little water droplets, so this kind doesn't really need a bowl. And I'm spraying it before I put it in so that way I don't stress it out, because it had a long journey here. And then of course the first couple days you want to just, monitor them, but don't really handle them. You don't want to stress them out because, like I said, they've been through a long journey here. And this one's just a little baby, so we don't want to risk anything going wrong. This is a slow-moving species, and I have read that they can usually become pretty tame. Now, most reptiles, it's not like a cat or a dog or a chicken. You're not really going to want to handle them or, play with them, per se, especially not on a regular basis. But there are a lot of species that do tolerate handling well, and some that even recognize their owners, and like I said, these ones are known to become pretty tame. And you can see that they put a moist paper towel in here. That way it could stay hydrated, and because this species needs humidity. And you can actually see it's shedding its skin. See, it's like a little cape on there. So the humidity is going to help with that. It's really cute. It's really tiny. And this species does not get large to begin with. They get about 4 to 5 inches long as adults. So I don't think this is doing justice how tiny the baby is on this video, but it's a tiny little thing. So we'll let him get settled in. I will put some food in here tonight. I'll show you that. And when I do that, I'll go over some of the care for these guys for you. But like I said, it's a baby, it's shedding, and it just got here, so we're not going to do a whole lot. Not really going to handle it anymore for a few days, but I'll go over the care, so stay tuned. Alright, it is now the evening, and I'm going to show you how to feed a chameleon gecko. So like I was saying earlier, they can eat a powdered diet that's labeled for crested geckos, but it's safe for pretty much all the New Caledonian geckos. I go with Pangea, and it comes in a lot of different flavors. Here we have the apricot, and then we have just the standard with insects one. It's extremely simple to feed. You just do 1 part powder to 2 parts water. You mix it up. It'll be about the consistency of baby food. And you can put it in a little bowl or a dish, or a tiny little water bottle cap works just fine too. And this is great if you're someone like me who hates dealing with bugs. This is so much easier. Now I will say though, these geckos, especially when they're young and growing, or if you have a breeding pair, you can give them insects a couple times a week. Obviously, it would have to be very small ones because this kind of gecko is really tiny, especially as a baby. When you do supplement with insects throughout the week, I recommend using a calcium with vitamin D3 supplement to coat the bugs on, and gut load your feeder insects too, which basically means feed them some fruits and vegetables so that they're healthy for your critter. A lot of people may not know this if they're new to reptiles, but reptiles cannot make their own D3 or regulate their own calcium intake in captivity, so this is essential for their survival. However, if you're feeding Pangea, this already has it mixed in it, so there's no need to add any more. In fact, if you add the calcium powder to this mix, it could actually prove to be detrimental because too much of a good thing could do the opposite of what you would expect, and it could actually make their bones rubbery and make them sick. Make the water lukewarm because, you know, they're cold-blooded animals, so you don't want to give them anything cold. Now, I know it looks like I mixed up a lot here, and just keep in mind, obviously for a little baby gecko this small, it's not going to eat this whole thing, but I also have a crested gecko who eats this too, and this will keep for a couple of nights if you keep it covered and in the fridge, and a couple hours before feeding, just take it out of the fridge so it can come back to room temperature and not be too cold for your gecko. I would recommend feeding baby geckos every night, and then once they're adults, you can offer it every other night or every 2 nights. Cold-blooded animals, their bodies are, I guess a good way to describe it is kind of like in slow motion because they're cold-blooded. Their metabolisms are slower than that of a mammals or warm-blooded animals. So they process things differently, which is why mature, healthy adults don't need to eat every single night. But a growing baby should definitely be offered it every night. I actually took a little bit of it out because I know this tiny little guy's not going to eat all that. Even this is a lot, but the next day I'll just remove whatever's not eaten and put fresh ones in. And since this is a bioactive tank, the Isopods, which you can see that little white one there, might actually get to this and clean it up before I have to. They really come in handy. They're really cool little creatures. And they love the crested gecko food. So here he, or she, I'm not sure yet, it's too young to tell, but here it is. Now, most geckos, once they mature, they're fairly easy for the most part to sex. The males will get a little bulge by the base of the tail, and the females obviously will not, so that's how you can tell. But at this age, it's just too little to know. But I have named it. I've named it Fable, and that name would work either way, so I guess it doesn't really matter what it turns out to be. These geckos can live for around 15 to even 20 years in captivity. However, they're fairly rare, and their lifespan's not too well documented, so there are reports that some may even live longer than that. Alright, let's put in the food. You should mist your enclosure every evening to help maintain humidity and so that they can drink the little water droplets. Check it in the morning as well. If your enclosure is not maintaining the proper humidity levels, give it another spray. Chameleon geckos are typically slow-moving, which is part of the reason why they got their name chameleon, because chameleons move slowly for the most part. With regular handling, they can become quite tame usually, but if they show any signs of stress, you should put them back in their enclosure and let them calm down. If threatened, chameleon geckos have been known to release a spray with a foul, sticky odor in it to help evade predators. However, it is very uncommon for them to do this in captivity and very uncommon for them to do it around people. But it's not impossible, so if that does happen to you, don't freak out. It's natural. There's nothing wrong with your gecko. Just put it back and wash your hands. And just take things slowly. Once it becomes tame, that shouldn't happen again unless you really freak it out. So I just wanted to show you how it looks under the light, so I'm going to turn it off in just a second. That way he can, or she can, settle down and come eat. And then we'll leave him alone for a little bit. We'll come back and check later, and I'll let you know how it's doing after it settles in for a little bit. Well, it came over to eat, so that's a really good sign. It seems to be settling in great, and I can't say enough good things about Josh's frogs. This animal is so healthy. It was shipped great. It arrived in a very timely fashion. I highly recommend them if you want to get a reptile or an amphibian. And it's captive bred, which is a huge plus, because I am not a huge fan of wild-caught imports. I just don't think it's right. But I think it's made itself right at home.